responsibility for this. Whatever needs to be done to build these levels will have to be done. Secondly, I think the Communist parties, the left, has a big role to play. Electorally, the left has become very much weak, especially the CPIM, which used to be the dominant electoral force in the left agenda. Now, over the years, it has not happened suddenly. It has happened over a long period, and there is no one single reason that we can identify for this. There are different reasons in Bengal, in Tripura, even right now in Kerala where they are in power. If you look at the Lok Sabha results, last two Lok Sabha results, the CPI is declining. So, and to some extent we have come up. We have not come up on a scale which should compensate for the decline of the CPI. And also we have come up in areas like Bihar and Jharkhand where the CPI was literally a major force. But in a way, despite the electoral decline of the left, I think if we want to sort of build these popular struggles, the left will have to play the anchor role. So in terms of ideological resistance and in terms of building people's struggles, the anchor role will have to be played by the left. And we are trying our best to cooperate, coordinate among the forces to build these struggles. Then this broad opposition coalition which we have in the name of India. Of course, it is not very cohesive. It doesn't really have much educational approach. It's very loose. But even then, I think it has served some purpose. And it will continue to serve some purpose. The broadest possible cooperation among opposition parties, primarily in the parliamentary area. So we are trying to remain involved and help in this process. And the biggest point possibly is, we understand that the fascists in India, they are drawing their strength from a number of factors. Of course, India's caste system. There are many people who will say that the caste system itself is the laboratory of fascism. So what many of us experiencing today, probably Dalits, the marginalized groups, they have been experiencing all along. So in many ways people talk about social fascism in India. So the caste system, the BJP has definitely sort of using it very deftly to their own benefit. Then this communal divide in India, that again, so the colonial forces, they used it, especially after 1857, where they realized that the Hindu-Muslim community could actually be a very powerful force. And they very deliberately promoted this communal divide in India. And then we suffered partition. So there are historical factors in many parts of India where this Hindu-Muslim divide is a very potent source of disruption. And the fascists can always use it to their advantage. They are using it. And the biggest thing probably which has happened, which has given the fascists so much power, is the corporate concentration, this what they call the crony capitalism. So it is this, the communal fascist ideology and this corporate power, the fusion of the two. So that is the major reason. So whatever is all the sources of power, factors which lend to strength to the fascist forces, we need to counter all these forces. So which means that if the caste system is working to the advantage of the fascist forces, then the anti-caste struggle, that needs to be strengthened. And here it is unfortunate and I expect paradoxical that you find there is a massive iconization of Ambedkar going on. Huge Ambedkar statues. I saw one here, I found one in Vijayawada, everywhere. So huge Ambedkar statues to camouflage the actual assault which is going on the Constitution. So people will feel that, well, here every government is paying its service to Ambedkar, every government is being very, very reverential towards Ambedkar. So that is to try and blunt the consciousness of the people. But still, I think Ambedkar remains a huge kind of resource, intellectually, historically, ideologically, that the anti-fascist resistance in India was drawn on. So this is one huge area where we are trying to invoke Ambedkar, not just in the anti-caste context. That is, of course, one of the key areas where we need to invoke Ambedkar. But I think equally importantly, the message of the Constitution. The Constitution has emerged as a rallying point, as a rallying weapon. And we need to, it's great that we have a Constitution. Even the Supreme Court, when they went for the deletion of the words secular and socialist, the two words which were inserted later through an amendment. But the Supreme Court, even now, even in Modi's India, even this compromised Supreme Court, even this Supreme Court had to say that, well, these words are here to stay. So the Constitution remains a great source of strength, I would say. It has its limitations historically, but it remains a source of strength. And thirdly, I will think that Ambedkar, where we have not really explored the potential, Ambedkar's socialism, Ambedkar against privatization, Ambedkar for nationalization, Ambedkar for comprehensive equality. So that is something that probably needs to be done. So we are trying to do this. We are trying to expand the resource base of the communist movement, of the anti-fascist movement. So all the ideologies which can be of the source of power for the anti-fascist resistance, the source of strength, they will have to be put to good use. We are trying to do this. And the left forces, we remain, people will say that there is not much of effective unity, which is true, but still, I think we need to work on this. So 2025 will be an interesting year. 100 years of the Communist Party and also 100 years of the RSS. 2 centenaries. So the 2 centenaries probably representing 2 ideologies that have been in contention for the last 100 years. And today that contention is very, very crucial. So I think we have decided that instead of treating it as an organizational event of the CPI, because in 1925 when the CPI was formed, we all were part of CPI. So today every other group, CPIM, CPI, the entire, many other left forces, so they were all, CPI was the third party. So we should use this occasion, instead of leaving it to the CPI, today's CPI, to celebrate extensively. I think communists across India, across parties, we need to make good use of this occasion and to celebrate our glorious heritage, our history, and more importantly, to sort of beat the communist ideology and communist struggles against the fascist onslaught being spearheaded by the RSS. So these are some of the areas where we are trying to work. strongest in Bihar and Jharkhand. But we are trying to grow beyond the Hindi belt. South India has been an important center of the government's movement, especially Andhra, Telangana. Now these are areas where the communist ideology was so popular. The communist tradition, people have been historically identified with the red flag. So definitely we need to sort of make good use of this heritage, of this history, of the tradition that we have. Not in every area we have this kind of popular history of communist movement. So I think in South India, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Telangana, maybe not so much in Karnataka, but by and large, South has a very strong communist tradition. So we need to sort of work more concertedly, more consciously in these areas. Likewise, even new areas the communist movement is growing. For example, the farmers movement. The farmers movement in Punjab, okay, we say Punjab has all been a fighting state since the days of Bhagat Singh and the freedom movement. But in Haryana, Western UP, so these are areas where the farmers movement has given us opened up new possibilities for us. So that's why I think it's not really a lost case. We are very much in the middle of fascist onslaught. The Lord will, whether we allow this fascism to get more entrenched, if it gets more entrenched and more aggressive, then obviously there will be no end to the kind of havoc that we can play. And there is no end to the kind of destruction that can happen in India. And these are of course warnings which are better than being 75 years ago. That constitution is only a comprehensive of democracy on an undemocratic side. So fascism can very well thrive on an undemocratic soil. So if the soil in India is not democratized, there will always be scope for fascism or a very regressive right-wing kind of ideologies, reactionary forces to grow and thrive in India. So that is of course there, but I think still we are very much in the middle of a protracted resistance where the battle can still be won. We need to work with more energy, determination and purposefully so that we do not really have the kind of fascist destruction which Nazi Germany had suffered, or the kind of thing which Israel is now doing in Palestine. So these are the forces who are capable of destroying India like this, the way Palestine is being destroyed, the way Germany had to suffer during the Second World War. But it is up to us to try and save India. So basically, I will just conclude by saying what Ambedkar had said, that if ever Hindu Rashtra becomes a reality in India, that will be the greatest calamity to befall on India. So we are facing a calamity, a huge disaster. And in the face of a disaster, so you need disaster management. So one is to rescue. So a lot of what we are doing is just rescue operation, trying to stop the BJP, trying to defeat, with whatever we have. So that I call rescue operation. Rescue is also important to save the country from a disaster. Then you need relief, you need rehabilitation. So we have to do that. A lot of places where the Congress is coming to power, defeating BJP. But if it doesn't really work, the BJP will come back stronger. The danger is very much there in Telangana. The danger is very much there in Karnataka. This is a state where we thought we succeeded in stopping the BJP. Yet the Congress government the way he is performing. So if there is no proper relief, no proper rehabilitation, and there is no real demarcation with fascist forces in terms of governance, in terms of political articulation, then that danger will always be there. So exerting more pressure on so-called non-BJP governments to perform and to draw the line with BJP, that is also important. And most important, of course, is to rebuild. So rescue, relief, rehabilitation, and reconstruction, rebuilding. So basically, democracy has to be rebuilt in India, a robust kind of democracy, which is what democratic revolution is all about, which is what the communist movement is all about, rebuilding democracy and making it more meaningful. So this, in short, these are the different planes on which we are trying to work, trying to combine the immediate struggles, the partial struggles, issue-based struggles with slightly medium-term kind of perspective, and of course the longer-term perspective. Trying to combine all these things in some kind of an integrated approach. So this is what our party is trying to do. In fact, I took a long time to do this introduction. I am looking forward to learning more about Telangana, about how you think the BJP's kind of toxic growth in Telangana, which I have told that going very fast, how this can be slowed down, how this can be stopped, what needs to be done here, and of course what needs to be done nationally on different fronts. So I'm just hoping that we can have sort of interaction so that I have more to learn and listen to. Thank you.
If I got you right, so I would say that we have started believing in elections or elections. But of course, as long as elections are there, that is also one area where you can, resist the fascist forces. So I think it needs to be used to talk about it. The real problem is there are other questions that you say. That when you are contesting, especially when you are contesting as part of a coalition, so the coalition tends to limit you. For example, in Bihar, we have a ban Bihar presence, but we contested only 19 seats as part of the Assembly coalition. But because we contested as part of the coalition, we managed to win 12 seats. Because we contested only 3 seats as part of the Lok Sabha coalition, we managed to win 2 seats. But it's true that we, in terms of electoral contest, we got limited to only 3 seats. So we need to be very careful not to allow ourselves to remain confined to only the areas where we are contesting. Our presence and our operational area that needs to constantly expand. And we are trying to do that. For example, in Bihar, we are operating on a pan-Bihar scale. Very careful. Even in Jharkhand, for example, we got only 2 MLAs. There are some people who thought that we should join the ministry. We didn't join the ministry. Primarily because we didn't want to limit ourselves. So we are trying to retain as much autonomy as possible so that we can focus more on this area of building struggles and expanding to But it's true, I mean, given the scale of the challenge, given the degree of the crisis, or the resources that we have at the moment, so there is a huge mismatch. So we need to grow fast and grow big. It's not it remains a challenge, especially this when you find a coalition, because within the coalition is against the BJP. But within the coalition, your allies, they are constantly trying to, reduce your influence. Sorry? That was happened in Maharashtra, which is very, very strange, of course. Nobody would have expected this to happen maybe 5 years ago. And one is also not sure if it will continue for another 5 years. But it's true that there are many forces for varying reasons. They are opposing the forces in varying degrees. So I think that is something we cannot ignore it. So there are parties which may not be offering ideological resistance, but from practical terms, socially, politically, they are contending their value. Whatever in real life, whatever available kind of opposition you have, I think we need to build on it, but definitely we cannot just rely on it, especially with parties which are right-wing parties, which are ideologically pro-Hindu. Shiv Sena is a pro-Hindu party. So for other reasons they are now fighting. Maybe it is more for federal India, Maharashtra versus Gujarat. A lot of other factors which you have to play. So this is an open question. Honestly, I don't really have the answer. You have to keep this in mind, keep this challenge in mind, but at the same time you have to keep using whatever available resources you have, whatever available forces you have to take on some monster like RSS, BJP, huge. We have never really seen anything like this. We have seen the Congress, we have seen a lot of democratic regimes, but never really we have seen anything as toxic, as destructive as this RSS BJP combined. So whatever needs to be done, we have to do that. Yeah. That's true, and not just Andhra, even in Bengal. Even in Bengal, where the CPIM and the left front, they ruled for as long as 34 years. This is the unfortunate reality. Let us see how we can be able to look at it.
Critics and enemies of Marxist.
Have we met before? No.
No, sir. This first time I have seen you in person. I know you photos in all, I know. First time I have seen you. And previously CPI, not with any party now. Previously I was CPI for 20 years. Enough, yes. I have a small doubt. I wonder how come you manage to keep your people so pure. It means 100% now maybe. As much as possible, you are able to keep them in the good looks of the people, with the rapport they got with the people. And that too in the age of liberalization and so much of easy money culture, consumerism, these things are pervasive. And as I see, many communist parties and the leaders of the communist parties are also succumbing to this culture. In the 1990s, after Soviet is gone, lot of influence of this culture into communist parties also. So that is why they have got separated from the people, and people are not in a position to accept it. Then how come you are managing to keep your party? That's a cultural thing. Maybe that's a cultural thing, and that requires psychological, and that requires more stamina than playing politics.
Maybe partly to do with our party history, the way the party grew. It didn't actually grow from above. It grew from below. After especially the setback of suffered in West Bengal, especially the kind of the way the party grew in Bihar. So we are lucky that there are still a lot of people who have this sense of ownership over the party. They think they are the party. Not the party is something from above, from distant, from outside. So the people, in many, still, we have a good base where people have this sense of ownership. And they keep an eye. They keep an eye on party policies, party leaders, how they are behaving, what they are doing. And I think that is very, very important. That is one thing, and partly probably it may not happen in every state, but especially in a state like Bihar, where the party grew through very fierce kind of attitude ecological struggle, a lot of state liberation. So that's how the party has sustained itself. That is number one. Number two, I think, is because we were never probably part of this whole electoral struggle and all that. And even now, one has to make certain, of course, constantly make some adjustments too. But we have always been careful about where to draw the line in the issue. So today, more than this, this is one thing that you mentioned. Consumerism, easy money, and liberalization, the impact of the agricultural impact. More importantly, I think communists are also feeling under pressure to be respectable Hindus. RSS has created such an environment where you feel that you cannot afford to be seen as a heretic, you cannot say this, do this. So a lot of fear. So this overcoming this fear and feeling free to express ourselves, this is what our ideology is. I mean, that doesn't mean that you have to be, let's say, adventurist or you have to be very anarchistic. You have to, at the end of the day, you need people. You need people to understand what you are trying to say. You need to communicate with the people and deal with the people. You cannot leave them at the mercy of the fascist forces. But at the same time, so this, I think, soft Hindutva kind of politics, that ideological pressure where most communist parties, not so much communist party, but the other parties, they are feeling finding themselves under pressure. So I would say that overcoming that pressure, that fear, not let that creep in and not let that determine and decide your policies and your articulation, your culture and your conduct, that is also very important. So capital, money, liberalization, that is a more, and that in some ways probably the whole climate crisis, making people think. So I find that whole consumerism, maybe 20 years ago we were talking about expanding middle class in India. But now that we are talking about shrinking middle class. So the economic crisis, the climate crisis, these are things which are forcing anyway a lot of people to think that this is not sustainable. So probably that unsustainability of this whole capitalist bubble, the growth bubble, that will help us. But this other thing, where people think that we also need to be what they say, Bharat ka rehna hai, to aisa karna hai, wo karna hai. This is what they are saying. But if people internalize it and start thinking that we actually have to do this to be seen as Indians, to be taken as Indians, that definition of Hindutva definition of nationalism, if we start internalizing it, that will probably be the biggest crisis for the communist movement. And for what communist movement? For the very concept of modern later. So I will say that these are two areas where one needs to be very, very cautious. As they say, there is nothing like caution. If you are cautious, if you are aware of the danger, then probably you can follow. I think they do work, but then the scale is, of course, what is understand. Not on a scale where they could make a difference. So that needs to be. And we have to. I think when we began, we were not actually thinking in terms of, Dalit liberation and all that. So the key word for the CPI, like Charu Mazumdar used to say, that landless poor. The landless poor is the leader of the revolution. So the job of a communist revolutionary was to go to a village and get integrated with the landless poor. Now the landless poor was the Dalit. So when you get integrated with the landless poor, he is living, he is or her, the challenges that they face in everyday life, So there was no way that the party could not respond to all those issues. So that's how, for example, when we look back, we found that we have been three key issues which we grew up fighting for: land, wages, and dignity. So the question of dignity, very basic dignity. So that is something that the CPI-M-L, from its very inception, began to fight. That's why, for example, when people started saying that Lalu Yadav, he is the icon of social justice, and it is Lalu Yadav who has given a voice to the poor. Okay, I mean, many people may say that, but then you will be contested. There are many, they will say that the CPI-M has already played this role. So, I mean, this is how the party is seen, that this is a party which has actually done this. And you will be right that in many states where, for example, you talk about West Bengal. West Bengal has such a huge, more than the national average Dalit population. But the Dalit agenda, say caste discrimination, marginalization, probably has never really been addressed on the level that even you have been addressed. So there is a deficit in many states where you didn't pay as much attention. And in Bihar, even without realizing you paid attention. difficult for us to work together, come together as organizations. But as individuals, as organizations, all put together, we can do something. And beyond this, also we are trying. Let's say classically, Communist parties always had food organization, youth organization, agricultural labor, farmers, trade unions. So that we also have. But beyond this, we are trying to create some more space for this kind of platforms. Like comrade Clinton, we started All India Lawyer Institution for Justice. This is not exactly the kind of civil liberty movement, human rights movement, which we have been used to seeing, but that is also there. But we thought that lawyers, especially when we are in this public affair, so lawyers, there are many lawyers who are speaking up. So this is, I think, getting some good response. We are working together with different kinds of we are planning this is second one? Second All India Conference. Likewise, we started one Adivasi Sangharsh Morcha. So that's also including people belonging to different parties. But as Adivasi activists, that's important. There is an Insaf Manch, basically for Muslims, Dalit Adivasis and people who are the biggest victims of justice. Something like a permanent enduring campaign for justice. Insaf Manch. So these are some of the platforms which are there in different states where people from diverse backgrounds are working together. And then, as I said, the overarching kind of thing like All India, which can be an umbrella for all these initiatives put together.
When I ask you what the principal direction you see in India, I got it from what I got from is this. The connection between fascism and democracy is principal connection. Can we say and how does it affect people's daily lives? Okay, except religious.
I think you can. So, I mean, for example, communists have been talking about principal contradictions. In communist vocabulary, communist parties, when we have been talking about principal contradiction, I mean, we never said that poverty is a principal contradiction. Poverty is, of course, there. So you can tell the people poverty is your biggest challenge.
But again, one condition has to be taken at time.
Right.
So that we can solve the
So that's what I'm saying. So traditionally, classically, what we are saying, you have never really been able to pinpoint this one contradiction. So one is, of course, India never really abolished feudalism. So feudal survivals. And feudal survivals affect India in a number of ways. Affect India in terms of land relations. You have such massive landlessness. This whole, in fact, the poor peasantry, the sharecroppers, the tenant farmers, who don't really own any land, but maybe leasing some land for some kind of subsistence farming or whatever. That is an offshoot of this whole continuing feudal power. So we have been saying that feudalism or feudal survivals and modern India, let's say that is a principle. Then of course capitalism is growing in India, and that capitalism is taking the shape of this kind of crony capitalism where you don't really have any sense of any fair competition, any kind of share. This thing, a few monopoly houses, they are dominating everything. So when I say fascism, I look at it as a combination of all these things. When I say, let's say, feudalism, so feudalism means not just landlordism. Landlordism is at the same time also
landlordism, and then let's say the caste operation, all these things put together, feudal power relation. So that contributes in a big way to fascism in India. Crony capitalism, that contributes to fascism in India. So fascism in India actually is a very concentrated form of everything that aids India, everything that is holding us back. And they in fact threaten to sort of not just holding us back, but pushing us back. So that's why I think in a way, for example, we found that in this last Lok election, nobody really expected the constitution to become such a sensitive subject. But that's a fact. The constitution became an agenda, maybe partly because we had someone like Ambedkar who chaired the drafting committee. So the constitution is identified with Ambedkar, and Ambedkar is seen as a very empowering, inspiring, very icon. Maybe partly because of this. But we can see that more and more people, they are identifying themselves with the constitution. Something which is there potentially, which was promised to us. Even this whole contradiction between, let's say, an over-centralizing Delhi government and states which are trying to retain their federal power, federal rights. So federalism versus, let's say, over-centralization. That is a major thing. So that again, people identify with the constitution. So I think depends on the section of the people you are talking to. I mean, bulldozer, for example. So if you talk to anybody, and the entire Muslim community, what is the biggest threat today? The biggest threat is that you have a bulldozer which is out to completely decimate your house, your identity. So that is, if you are not talking of this and talking of, let's say, unemployment and economic insecurity and price rise, that becomes secondary to them. The more primary thing is this whole bulldozer. That is a real threat to their everyday life. So depends on, there cannot be a very single answer to this whole principal contradiction thing. And if you look at fascism as a concentrated expression of all that bothers us in different ways, then I think it is possible. People do understand. And of course, we need to link it up with their everyday, for example, in some areas, education, housing, health, these are definitely issues that people respond to.
Regarding the electoral politics, the practice of the contestation is CPI or CPI. Either CPI or CPI, they are aligning with either Congress or BJP. This is the general practice. With BJP? No, either BJP or Janata Party. CPI has aligned with the Congress at one time. After in 1977, CPM has aligned with Janata Party. Where that time BJP was a part of it. So what we are seeing is these Congress and BJP, they are two national parties, which basically represent the RW users, RWR bourgeoisie. All the remaining parties represent the regional parties. And the main competition is between the RWR parties and the regional parties. This is how the national position is being manifested in Indian politics. So we have to base upon these two, and we are opposed both Congress and BJP, rather than aligning with Congress and giving us one of defeating the BJP.